Hello, our users. My name is John Kulas. I'm a 20-year professor of industrial and organizational psychology, 12-year user of R for normal, boring, statistical, and analytical operations. But for the last, I don't know, for 9 or 10 of those 12 years, I've also been using the same environment that I write my R script in. I've been staying in that environment to execute full projects. I had to turn down my music a little bit there. Let's do a little bit more. To execute full projects, so things like reports and papers and websites and slides, like you're looking at right here. Um, I craft this all within R, and the way in which I do that, historically we used packages, R packages, within what's called the R markdown ecosystem. So there was a different package for each thing you wanted to produce. I liked Jernigan, and of course there's different ways to do this, different packages, but Jernigan was kind of my go-to for slides. Blogdown I used for websites. Papaja was a package I used for writing papers. But now there's a new software system supported by Posit, the people that bring us our studio. And Posit is kind of a one-stop shop. So within Posit, you can do slides and you can do papers, you can do reports, you can do dashboards, you can do websites, you can do books, you can do so much. So I'm here every week promoting this way of structuring your work because I really do believe that it's the way in which people who are doing quantitative things should be structuring their broader work project. I don't talk about it much, but I actually wrote a book that was published in first published in 2007 or 2008. I wrote it a lot earlier than that. I was looking for a publisher for a long time, but it was on reproducible research, and it was on keeping a diary of the things that you do and being able to undo mistakes that you will inevitably make. And so at the time so I probably wrote the majority of that in 2003, 2004, that kind of era. But at that time, we did not have, I wasn't aware of tools within which you could do both your analytical work as well as your scripting work, actual prose, writing of text, writing of narrative. It existed, but in my field, psychology, that wasn't something that was really well known or well communicated. It did exist, but we didn't use it as a field. Well, now we have these tools available, and there's no reason not to do it, and it's fun. So I'm here every week. I was running around a little bit there right before I hopped on. So let me catch up with a couple of things I want to put in the comments. I want to put a link to tonight's slides. So I keep a little note to myself there. You can see my little write-up that I did for X right before I popped on, and then I have hyperlinks to two things for you good people. So one is the slides themselves that you're looking at, so you can have access to them. There's hyperlinks throughout here, and these were crafted through Quarto. But then there's also a link to a tutorial, and I'll keep doing that. I'll keep that up there. That's if you stumble across this and are curious and say, hey, that sounds like something I might want to try. The tutorial, the walkthrough should do the heavy lifting for you. So you should just be able to follow along with that tutorial and make your own report. And you can see if whether or not you think this is something that you want to adopt, but you should adopt it. All of you out there, you should be adopting that. So every week I'm here to be a resource, and if anyone has any questions about doing this or how to get started, or maybe you're stuck on something, that always takes precedent. That's the reason I'm here live. There's a couple of reasons I'm here live. I am a strong believer that we learn more from our mistakes than our successes. And so I do want to be here and show other people who might be interested in this the error-filled process sometimes that we go through. So I'm not embarrassed by making mistakes. So I want to be live and show those mistakes and how to overcome those mistakes, which is really what's important. So that always takes precedent. But in the absence of questions, we've been covering focal topics and just kind of little specific capabilities of using this way to structure your work. And so today, what we're going to take a look at is some accessibility capabilities of these particular slides. So what you're looking at, they're called RevealJS slides. These RevealJS slides are facilitated via Quarto. That's not the only way you can create them, but it's the way that data scientists using R or Python are probably going to want to engage with RevealJS slides. It's the way I do it. And so we're going to take a look at RevealJS slide accessibility features that come out of the box from the good people at Quarto. I'm not going to do a full accounting of that because I hadn't planned for that. And I was just thinking about that before I came on. I was like, maybe we should have done a deeper dive on that, but I'm not going to do a deep dive on the out-of-the-box capabilities in terms of accessibility of Quarto's RevealJS presentation slides. And I'm also not going to do a comparison against PowerPoint or Google Slides, which are probably the other two delivery mechanisms that instructors, whether it be in an academic or in a training type application, those are the PowerPoint and Google Slides are what most people use. I'm trying to promote these RevealJS slides as an alternative and as a preferable alternative, but I'm not going to do a comparison of accessibility of PowerPoint or Google Slides with these RevealJS slides. If that's something that interests somebody, again, everything we do here, you, the people who are watching, take precedent and priority. If you want to see something, just let me know and we'll cover it. But so in the absence of that, what I thought we would do would be to do a brief touch on what these capabilities are out of the box, and then also look at an extension. So there's an extension that there's a couple of extensions that I stumbled across that enhance the accessibility features of these RevealJS slides. So we'll take a look at one of them, and I might allude to another one, or if someone has a question about the other one that I came across, let me know, and we can take a look at that as well. Okay, so I forgot one other thing. So let me also get my little reminder up here. We picked up another couple subscribers. Thank you, people. It's wonderful. I would love it if I would love it if everyone using quantitative methods in their work would adopt this. But the fact that 132 of you are on board with this stuff, I'm ecstatic. I love it. It makes me so happy. So thank you. That being said, next week I have a conflict, and so I don't like to cancel. I was kind of notorious as a professor of not canceling, even under pressure. So I was sometimes pressured, but I only would cancel graduate classes if there was a good reason for it. But so next week I do have a conflict, and the way to kind of sidestep that conflict, I think that will work fairly well, is if we just move this up 2 hours. So I know most of you that engage with this don't engage with it live, so I didn't think it would be a major thing. But next week will be 2 hours early, and that'll just be a temporary thing. So after next week, we'll bump back to the 7 o'clock Eastern start time. Okay, so before we get into accessibility and enhancing the accessibility capabilities of RevealJS slides, let's do a recap into what the heck happened last week.
Let us return to dear old Abominable Manor, where last time Boris Badenov made a startling discovery.
You mean I don't got to kill Moose?
Of course not. We'll still get the £1 million note if we can take a picture of him outside the house.
Yes, according to the will, he must not leave Abominable Manor for 1 week.
The week was almost up, but so was Bullwinkle's dander.
I tell you, Rock, if I don't get some air, I'll go stale.
Better not, Bullwinkle.
With that, Rocky left to take a nap. That's when Boris came in.
Boy, oh boy, it's last quarter with only 2 seconds left to play, and we behind 6 points.
Never fear, Canute. I shall score us a touchdown.
Good, Moose. Here, take Pigskin and go over goal line.
But the goal line Boris referred to was outside Abominable Manor, where Natasha waited with a camera.
I take picture of moose suitable for framing, and job is done.
Bullwinkle set sail for the open door, and it looked like the end, but only of our last episode, for the commotion downstairs had arrested the attention of our staunch hero.
If you're not aware, Bullwinkle J. Moose is the world's best football player. So he's a running back, I think, is his natural position. And defenders get caught up in his antlers. So he just has an entire team when he's running that get kind of carried with him on his antlers. So appealing to his athletic prowess was probably a pretty wily and smart kind of strategy by our old nemesis Boris there. So last week we took a look at list tables, and list tables are a new way to structure tables within your documents that the Quarto team is supporting. So it's a new syntactic structure. If you are interested in them, you can take the clipboard here on the left. You can copy that and paste this into your local session, and you'll get a representation like what we have here on the right. So on the right, this is what a list table looks like. Now I have a couple of interactive elements there, so you're going to want to do this in an HTML type file if you want full representation of what I have. And then I did one other thing. So last week I mentioned Iconify as a way to get these little emojis and symbols and like corporate logos and things like that. Even the R symbol, the R Studio symbol, the Quarto symbol. I'm grabbing those all from a repository called Iconify. And there's an extension. We're going to talk about extensions tonight. But there's an extension that permits the capabilities to reproduce emojis like this. And this emoji has some animation to it. And so I do have a note in here that says, if you want to fully reproduce what I have, first of all, you're going to need to add some curly brackets on line 16. Because I don't know if it's a bug or what, but this is the first I've kind of come across this issue, and I didn't look into it. But the full, what's called a short code, when I tried to represent it within the code block here, it was ghosting. So I had to take off those, beginning and ending curly brackets on the full short code. Now I'm referring to what's on line 16 as a short code, and as I came across this issue this week, I actually decided that next week's topic is already decided because I'm going to cover short codes. And so short codes, I've been seeing more and more scripting specified this way, so we're going to cover that next week. But if you want to fully represent what I have, just be aware that there's going to be a little tweaking that you need to do. First of all, add those curly brackets. Second of all, you're going to need the Iconify Quarto extension. And we're going to go over not the Iconify Quarto extension, but we're going to go over a different extension tonight. And the process is the same in terms of how you access it and use it. I have a couple other notes here. Let me check those other notes. I did this quite a while ago, so I don't recall off the top of my head what exactly these notes are. So the first one is regarding the attributes that are located at the opening fence location. So again, curly bracket specification. So there's a number of what are called bootstrap classes that you can apply to the table to alter its format. So these are things like, do I want it striped? Do I want it interactive in the sense of identifying when the mouse is near or in a location? And there's about 20 or so bootstrap classes that you should be able to apply. They're not all going to be operative in every format. So last week we did these list table specifications in an HTML product, we did it in a typist product, and we did it in a traditional PDF that requires the intermediary tech specification. And in all three of those formats, this new form of table worked fine. But the bootstrap classes aren't going to all work the same way in all those different formats. The bootstrap classes should always work in HTML, and they'll sometimes work in those other formats. It's kind of the way I think about them. The title or label, so depending on how you're kind of interpreting this, it's going to be referred to differently. So Quarto likes to refer to these as labels, but in the context of something like a paper, we would also call it a title. But the title or label specification is very different in these list tables. This is the only time I've seen something like this, where the very first, they call it a paragraph, but the very first content that's non-bulleted that occurs after the opening fence that is interpreted as the title or label for your table. So that's very unique and that's very different. And then just be aware that if you want to engage with these, and the reason you would want to engage with these has to do with, in my opinion, so first of all, it could be the scripting. So you might be drawn to the scripting. It looks messy right now, but once you spend a little time with it and deconstruct it, it's really not. It's organized by nested bullets. On line 4 here, this is a first level bullet. This is a second level bullet. The first levels are identifying different rows in your table. The second levels are identifying what goes across the columns within that row. So it can get more complex, but traditional markdown table specifications, they're messy as well. They tend to be messy horizontally. So I can see the appeal of making something more complex vertically, given the way that we structure things in RStudio, in these QMD files, in Jupyter Lab, and Positron, and VS Code, and whatever IDE you choose to interact with. It's going to be easier to stack things vertically than it is to stack things left and right. If I had the capability, I would have just blessed all of you, but I don't have that capability, unfortunately. I wasn't given that power. But so up and down stacking of content is, in my opinion, preferable to left and right, because the left and right, eventually you're going to need to kind of carry over to the next line. And it gets really, really messy, really, 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 really messy. So one of the appeals of these list tables is that vertical stacking of content. But the other main one is the mismatch or mixing or just variety and diversity of content that you can include in the table. And so this was always something that had kind of hit or miss capability using the old markdown table specification. But these list tables in particular, because what they are representing is a list, and a list is intentionally built to contain really complex information and information of different forms and formats. We can see here that there's just an incredible variety of content. Now, it's silliness. There's inline code here that's represented. There's a bullet. There's an icon. There is a GIF, a moving picture. There are some code chunks with operable clipboards. There's a image in here. So these are all very unique pieces of information that can be displayed in the same table. And that, to me, is kind of the main advantage of list tables, and why, in addition to the vertical versus horizontal stacking, why you might want to engage with them. Of course, always keep in mind the caveat here that the alternative to a list table shouldn't just be considered a markdown table, but you should also consider all of the tables that are facilitated via more traditional R packages. So the DT package, the tiny tables package, the cable package, the cable extra package. There's many of them that I tend to prefer when I'm presenting something in tabular format. But now that these list tables are there, I might start using them more frequently, and here's one right here. So list tables, that was kind of neat. Okay, so on to today's topic. So today's topic, I don't know how I stumbled across this, but I found a package and I'm sorry, we were just talking about packages. I found an extension to Quarto, and that extension is primarily authored by a prolific contributor to these extensions. And I need to follow up on this at some point, but I believe that he does have some I don't know that he's a direct POSIT employee. I suspect he might be, or at least some association there. But the reason that that's germane is that would make the extensions that he is working on more likely to maybe be enveloped into future releases of Quarto. So it's possible that some of this stuff, even though it's now not kind of out of the box there, that it might be something that gets rolled into future releases of Quarto. So if you track Quarto's kind of evolution, there's been several things that started as extensions and now are built in. So Lightbox images, my recollection is they started as an extension. Multiplex we've talked about, and I think we're going to talk about multiplex again tonight, because to me what we're going to cover probably has more power in a multiplex application. So we'll come back to that. And by the way, I'm going to keep my eye on comments. So if I'm using any terms, it strikes me when I say multiplex, lightbox, things like that, that I've been doing this now for 129 sessions, but not all of you have probably been watching for all 129. So the only reason I know these terms is because we've covered them on these weekly sessions. So if I say something that makes no sense to you, or you're like, what does that word mean? Drop me a note and we can spend a little time on it. So RevealJS slides, I've been for a couple of years now, I've been kind of advocating their use in classroom applications. Now, I'm no longer a full-time professor. I still do some part-time instruction, and I hope to do more in the future. And I'll continue to use RevealJS slides in my work because I think they're very powerful. One of the reasons I thought that they were powerful is because it was my understanding that these are a little more accessible to things like screen readers and people who are wanting greater features included that help accessibility. Now, by accessibility, what we're talking about here is we're talking about it in the current use of the word, which is disability. So which is accommodations for disabilities. So accessibility in terms of the products that we're generating, this is in consideration of individuals who may have special needs or might have a disability that interferes or partially interferes with their ability to access the content. And so that's where that word comes from, and that's what it means in this application. So my understanding was that these RevealJS slides just out of the box were more accessible than PowerPoint, for example. Now, I've had a couple of discussions just in the last week with people who maybe don't have that same opinion. And so we're gonna cover some of these accessibility capabilities tonight. And like I said in the intro, it's not my intent to do a comparison and contrast with other alternatives. We're just going to look internally to RevealJS presentations and see what they have in terms of capabilities. So just out of the box, one thing that they do have is any HTML Quarto product has this accessibility check capability using Axe Core. And Axe Core is an open source, they call it an industry standard, but it's something that is supported on GitHub. The links that I have will take you and walk you through what the philosophy is behind Axe Core. And Axe Core, again, it's something that is happening outside of Quarto, outside of using R to author. It's just happening independently. Seems like a consortium of individuals that are trying to provide some tools for individuals who are interested in checking the accessibility of their HTML products. So this is kind of specific to web applications because I believe the WCAG, I believe that is a web. Whoa. Why did that copy really weird? I believe that is a web-specific kind of, web content accessibility guidelines. So these are specific to kind of web applications. However, there are documents that are hosted on the web, so we and there might be other reasons for this, but we also have consideration of PDFs and other document types that these regulations and recommendations are relevant for. Okay, so through Quarto, we have access to this Axe Core review of your document itself, and it's a really easy integration in terms of how to use this within a Quarto document. So let's go ahead and before we get to the enhancements, let's check out just a couple of these things. So I'm going to open up our studio and I'm going to start a new Quarto document. Now we're going to be talking about RevealJS slides, so I'm going to go right into a RevealJS slide and we'll render that straight out of the box. I'm just going to overwrite an old QMD that I have, because if you've been watching this for weeks, you know I got a proliferation of QMDs here. I'm not happy about it. So it's a boilerplate template RevealJS slide that the Quarto team has put together that talks about some of the capabilities. Now if I want an accessibility check on that, I can just change my YAML, the front matter here, that's defined. It's defined by, or it starts with an opening 3 dashes. That's the opening fence, and then a closing 3 dashes is the closing fence. The majority of your Quarto documents are going to have a YAML specified in it. Now, I'm going to nest information in my YAML, and so I'm going to say I want ax true. Although I think I want to amend that, but we'll start with that and see what actually happens if I render the document. So the ax review is going to happen upon your individual local preview, and it's going to be in your accessible session. What I would like to do, I didn't get anything there, so we're going to ask for the output. I think this is, so I did actually a little work on this over the course of the last week, and I thought it was pretty neat. Output document, not true we want. So output document. There's a couple of options for output. I'm trying to get one that is going to give me feedback right in the presentation window itself. And we may have to, there we go. So there's an accessibility report. So when I say output document, what it's doing is it's appending the ax review of the document at the end of the document itself. And for the RevealJS slides, the end of the document is slide number 4, I guess. So it says there is a serious the Quarto team probably doesn't want to know this. There is a serious issue where we ensure that links have discernible text. There is a violation of that on the slide, apparently, according to this review. Now, it's funny, on the GitHub repository, they talk about, they have a number, and the number is like 57%. So it says that this process, this ax, what's it called? Ax, where are we here? Let me get back to my slides and see. Ax core. So this ax core capability, they say it has like a 57% success rate. Well, to an IO psychologist, that's a little, it's nice to have a number, but we want more. So what I'm curious about is, do we have false alarms, or do we have missing stuff? So is there stuff that's being flagged that shouldn't be flagged, or alternatively, is there stuff that's not being flagged that should be flagged? And so when we get that 57% accuracy number, I would love to see internally, an actual explicit articulation of that. But it's saying that I have a serious issue and I have a critical issue. Now we can add other issues. Those particular issues, I'm not sure how bad they are, but I can tell you that, for example, if we took some content and we let's just make it a little more difficult to see. So that content itself, I'm just going to take Quarto's enables and I'm going to change the font color of that. And so I've got a bunch of kind of old code that I can capture here because I do this occasionally. So there's a couple of different ways to do that. Usually I write full CSS, but occasionally I'll just do CSS shortcodes. And so, I'm sorry, I'll just do a bracketed span with CSS directly in that bracketed span. So here I'm saying I want to apply a color to the information in the square brackets. And I'm going to make that color a little less distinct from the background. So let's look for a color that's closer to that. So that looks close to white. So I'm going to go ahead and take that hex specification. I'm going to put it in here on line 11. And now my expectation is that when I re-render this, the Quarto enables is going to be harder to see. And what I'm curious about is if my accessibility report, which, sorry, it's not, the RStudio preview window, you've heard me complain about this before, but over the course of the last year or so, it's gotten a little less consistent in terms of its helpfulness or bugginess. So I'm expecting a third issue to pop up here on this accessibility report, just intentionally, as we're kind of hiding something. So now you see the Quarto enables is a little harder to see. So let's see if that's picked up. It's not really being picked up in here, is it? Okay. Well, Axe Core Review is something that is available for HTML product types. I'm going to render this as an HTML file just to see if we get any different sort of feedback on it. Information is the same. There you see, okay, so I like this. So here, instead of appending to the bottom, it's kind of, the format of this is different. So that's interesting. Ensure the contrast between foreground and background colors. This feedback is a lot more informative to me. So I wonder if that's all it's picking up on is just that. So let's change the color. Black, I believe, is 0. I think that's black. So I want to leave the bracketed span in there. No, it still doesn't like it. So that wasn't what it was picking up on. So one of the issues, I haven't played with this extensively, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly how to change the feedback on this, but it looks like, okay, that's nice. So it looks like it's actually giving me, upon hover, it's telling me where the violation is. Now, the hyperlink itself isn't active, but it's active upon hover. We weren't seeing that with the RevealJS slides, possibly because the violation was on a previous slide, so not on the slide that I was currently active on. And I'm guessing that that's where the other violation that Xcore identified was in our RevealJS slide was probably the fact that stuff was kind of hidden, right? So not everything is presented on the same page. So let's see if we can actually change that. So I should be able to change the hyperlink color. I think it might be a YAML command, so let's actually see if it's a YAML command. Metadata, citations, format options. We'll see if we can just apply the same kind of cheat code that we have here, which is just apply our CSS directly. So I'm going to see if I can make that hyperlink black. And I'm not sure it's going to work because there is information internally in Quarto saying if it's a hyperlink, you should make sure that hyperlinks need to look this way. So that didn't look. Or that didn't look. That didn't work. I know there is a hyperlink. I believe it's a YAML command. So we'll go to our cheap AI for this that we don't pay for, and we'll say, how can I quickly change hyperlink color within a Quarto HTML document. Because and again, the reason I'm doing this is I believe there's a YAML specification like hyperlink or something. Link color, there we go. Probably here. Now, it may be at the wrong level of indentation, so we might have to go back and change that. No, that worked. Okay. So it worked there. I'm kind of curious if it would have worked without indentation as well, so I just want to rerun that. Just out of personal curiosity. Yep, that's fine. So that was our violation there. So no axe core violations. It's nice to get that positive feedback as well, or feedback regarding the absence of a violation. Okay. The other thing we could play with themes as well. Let me go back to the RevealJS format and see if it's still picking up violations now that we changed the hyperlink. So again, in the RevealJS slides, the violations are going to be listed on the back page. No, it's still saying it doesn't like them. And again, it's picking up different. So it's a discernible text. So to me, that discernible text, the only hyperlink we have is here. So if we change the full URL itself to please see the URL, and we use the common markdown convention of square brackets with an adjacent parenthesis, then the same content will be there. It's a hidden URL, so it's a hidden hyperlink. So let's see here. So now the hyperlink is there, and if we go to the last page, no, it still says there's two of them that it doesn't like. Okay, so it's there. It looks like it might be a little more useful in a straightforward HTML application than in a RevealJS slide deck, but we're gonna come back to that, I think, because we're gonna use it again after we check out the extension. So in addition to axe core, there are there's quite a number of kind of built-in advantages to structuring what you do using RevealJS, just in terms of the way that you specify the stuff that you're interested in. So headings, for example, headings should be embedded within a document as metadata, and so that's something that screen readers should pick up on. There is alt text in terms of images that you can use as well, and so again, there's a couple different ways to do this, but one very straightforward way is to use that curly bracket adjacent convention, and that will provide an attribute. In this particular case, you can say that the alternative figure caption is, and then you describe what it actually is, and that's going to be useful for screen readers. So some of this accessibility stuff, actually most of the accessibility stuff, is kind of still on the it's your responsibility as someone that's crafting this. It's probably a good time too, before we get into the extension, to mention that when I craft my slides, well, that was a big one. That was a Grandpa Coolis sneeze. He used to wake up the whole house. He had a heck of a Polish sneeze, that man. But his grandson just had one. When I'm crafting slides, I'm doing so that you're saying, I'm doing so more for visual kind of explicitly for visual entertainment, I guess, or visual enjoyment. So I'm doing things on here that definitely are not consistent with accessibility first and foremost in mind. I don't know that this is accurate, but the perspective that I have as someone who's put a lot of presentations together is that you can go toward entertaining and visually appealing, or you can go toward accessible, and those two things, while not mutually exclusive, they are going to drive you toward a very different looking end product. So we're not quite there yet in terms, I don't believe, unless I'm not unless I'm missing something. I do think that you kind of have to either thread the needle or make a design choice. Am I more concerned with accessibility, or am I more concerned with entertainment and being appealing? And this being on YouTube, of course, I'm gonna kind of err on the side of I want it to be visually entertaining or appealing and silly things on there. So what you're looking at is not maximized for accessibility. However, in addition to alt text specification, these RevealJS slides do have a slide tone that can be initiated as well, and that's a really easy add in here as well. It's just underneath RevealJS, you say slide tone, yes, I want it. And then when I advance the slide, you'll hear that tone. Maybe you heard it pick up on my mic there. And so they do have built. I'm going to turn it off because it's going to drive me crazy. They do have built-in capabilities with extra accessibility considerations made. Now there are themes as well. There are in my research there are no specific Quarto themes that are maximized for accessibility. However, the default theme, it has this very nice black and white contrast. By the way, it's another good point. It's a good time to acknowledge that traditionally accessibility is primarily targeting visually and hearing vision and hearing impairments. Increasingly, it's expanding. So neurodiversity is another kind of very popular one that is something that there's accommodations being made for as well. Physical disabilities have always also been something that have been taken under consideration. The RevealJS slides out of the box do a really good job of having keyboard navigation so that you don't need the mouse. Keyboard navigation is something that does help for physical handicap, physically handicapped users, I should say. So there are a bunch of capabilities that come out of the box, but we also want to check out some kind of cutting edge or extent or additional capabilities that extend the out of the box capabilities for these Quarto RevealJS slides. And so I have on this week's slides, I do have the second column here on the next to last slide is going to bring you to an extension, and that extension has a bunch of accessibility specific capabilities. I've only listed 4 of them here, and as a matter of fact, when I say content appearance controls, there's a bunch of ways that you can do that. So there are many capabilities of this package, and here's a demo. So the demo walks you through what one of these RevealJS slides that's maximized for accessibility might actually look like. We're gonna go ahead and use the extension and then test it out ourselves and see what it looks like. So there is a hyperlink as well. I kind of followed it circuitously there, but there's multiple hyperlinks on this week's slides that will take you to this repository. The repository itself and the extension is called Quarto-RevealJS-Ally, and ally is being spelled with 2 1s there. There is another, I alluded to this, there's another Ally extension that's out there. I believe I'm not sure it's actually called an extension because it's not specific to Quarto. I think it might be called a plugin. So that's something that we could check out as well. This one I thought we would probably want to try because it's specific to those slides, and I wanted to stay focused on slides this week. So this extension enhances RevealJS presentations with accessibility features. It provides so here's a listing of kind of the elevator pitch of what it does. Skip navigation, enhanced focused indicators, reduced motion support, high contrast mode, font size controls, font selection, text spacing controls, color overlays for reading comfort, link highlighting. That's what we got dinged on, I think, from the Axe Core review. ARIA slide landmarks. I'm not sure what that is. Alt text warnings. This is really nice. If we do those alt figure caps, if we get warnings on that, whether they exist, don't exist, that's actually nice for someone that's putting these together. It's like, hey, big dummy, you forgot to put one on that. Screen reader announcements, slide change cues. There are both visual and audio cues. That's really kind of cool. The visual cues, I think, are pretty cool. And an accessibility settings menu. This is where I spent most of my time, and this is why I think this extension paired with multiplex is a good way to increase accessibility for your students or the people you're presenting to. Let's just say students. So it's a good way to make accessibility kind of available to your students. If you are crafting slides via RevealJS and you choose multiplex as true, they can have a local version of what you're presenting on their device, and their device they can configure however they want, not just on their device presumably would already be pre-configured to maximize accessibility for them, but the slides themselves, now the slides that they have access to, they are also going to have features that maximize accessibility for those students. So this extension paired with multiplex, to me, that's kind of the way to go. So enough talking about it. Let's install it and see what it actually does. All of these Quarto extensions, I think all of them that I've used are available on GitHub, and that's where there's plenty of links around. You can ask me if you're interested, look through past slides that I have, and there's plenty of links to repositories with extensions on them. But on the Quarto help page as well, there will be links to extensions with capabilities, and I think those links primarily take you to GitHub pages. So I'm going to enter a project. Every time we use an extension, it's going to be easiest to use that extension if we're operating within a project directory, if we're actually, if we're in RStudio. So let me see, I think Spider-Man. So Spider-Man was a project that we created a few weeks ago. And because I have such a proliferation of things, I think I'm just going to put it, instead of creating a new project folder, I'm just going to use this project folder. And so this project folder is located on my C drive in my Kulas folder, and then there's a Spider-Man. So again, if I open my Windows Explorer, the information in RStudio is going to be duplicated there in my Windows Explorer. So it may not present in the same order because there's different kind of preferences in terms of my Windows Explorer, but the content is the same. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to paste the command that we have on the GitHub page. Now this is something that you're not going to engage with at the terminal. This is something you're not going to engage with at the R console. These are not R commands. These are Quarto commands. And so you're going to want to use the terminal for that. If you don't have a terminal available to you, or you don't see it as a tab in your RStudio session, just go to Tools, Terminal, and you can open up a new one. So we'll add the extension. My voice is starting to go again. Do I trust the authors? This guy, I trust this guy. Like, if I were in World War II and I needed a foxhole mate, I would trust this guy. This guy's made some good stuff. Following changes will be made. It's always going to, even if you're installing an extension for the first time, it's always going to say changes are going to be made. The changes here are just, I'm putting it in. So yes, we want to continue. View documentation, probably should and never have. Why start now, right? Okay, so there's now an extensions folder, and in that extensions folder I have all the capabilities that I need that this good person has put together in terms of being able to use this capability, this increase for RevealJS slides in terms of their accessibility. So let's go ahead, and now in my project directory I am going to create another another new presentation. So I have some personal features set up, so I'm not getting the boilerplate on my wizard, and that's a Kulas issue. So let's actually, I'm going to give it a couple of slides. We should say slide. So we'll say slide 1, slide 2, slide 3, and let's put some of that text in again that we know is going to be a violation. So I'm going to put how you doing. We'll go ahead and give that a bad color. Now where was my bad color? I just had a bad color, didn't I? And I stole it from this week's slide specification. I'm just looking for the CSS because I don't want to write a whole CSS bit on here. I just want the color, and now I forget what the color that we chose was. Let's just do white so it's really ghosted. FDF, no, I just got it pure white. There it is, FFF, it's all F's. And even though R is case sensitive, the hex codes aren't, so I did capital F, but it doesn't matter. I could do FF, 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 that's fine. Slide 2, that's add a picture. And we need to add a hyperlink too. So we're trying to add features that might get picked up as being in violation of accessibility standards, because we are going to apply, if we have time, that AX code again after we use the extension. So let's look for Daredevil. So Daredevil has a visual impairment. It's got to be a cartoon though, because we always do cartoons. There we go. I don't like that one. Ooh, this one's cool. So Daredevil has a visual impairment, but he has kind of more attuned senses to kind of make up for that. And then slide 3, we'll put in hyperlinks. Hyperlinks galore. So I'm going to do just a straight, we'll do Google. Why is that? There we go. Don't ask me to type a straight URL. Then we'll do this one is hidden. And we'll link it to Google. What the heck is the URL? What is going on with my browser? Look at that. I'm getting a goofy URL for Google. What is going on? Why is it giving me a code at the end? Am I being tracked? Is Google tracking me? Kind of seems like it is. Okay. So let's go ahead and just render our presentation. I'm going to call it presentation because there's other stuff in this folder that I don't recall exactly what it was supposed to be doing. Hey there, question mark. Why? Oh, because it's hidden. We hid it. We intentionally hid it. That's why it looks so goofy. So it's actually correct. It looks goofy. There's Daredevil, and then there's our links. So let's do an axe core on that, just out of curiosity. I think it was output document. Off the top of my head, we may have to go back and look at that because I'm not sure that's the case. So let's take another look at that. It was axe output document. That should be right. What did we do wrong? I'm not seeing anything at the end. Maybe it's just not picking up any violations. Again, the axe, just not that we've thoroughly vetted it, but the first time we looked at it, it seemed like it was maybe a little more useful with a straight HTML page instead of the RevealJS. Yeah. So now it is picking up. It is picking up. Hey, images must have alternate text. I love that. Navbar doesn't like our navbar. We're getting a navbar because I'm doing this in a project directory that actually has. It was the broader project was a web page, and so we have a YAML in there. I'm going to get rid of that YAML because that's really screwing us up. So I'm just going to delete that. No, don't delete the YAML. Now we should be able to have just a lone page. There's going to be some linkages on the project itself. All right. Let's start a different project. I really didn't want to do a different project. New directory, new project. We'll call it, if we had Spider-Man, we'll call it Superman. Now we'll call it accessibility. What doesn't it like? Okay, we'll call it Daredevil. I'm going kind of fast. Did I do something? I must have done something wrong here. I guess I was in the wrong window. I was going too fast. So there we have our new project directory. I'm going to do my Quarto document. I did copy the previous one, so we'll see if it gives us now any boilerplate. It does. So maybe we'll just stick with this. Well, no, we won't stick with this. We'll do the one that we had. And I am curious if we'll get a little more axe feedback. Now we haven't engaged with the extension yet. There we go. Okay, so same issues. Let's put a alt text on this. I think that's fig alt. I think. And we'll see if we can at least get the, so using axe core, going back and forth with axe core, we'll see if we can at least get the image that it doesn't like. We'll see if we can get this critical one to go away. And all I did was I added this curly bracket here to the image. Yeah, it still doesn't like it. Okay. So axe core, I don't know, maybe useful, may not be useful. It's definitely something we would have to play around with a little more in order to make a determination as to kind of just how to most effectively use it. There we go. Now we're actually getting so now we're getting some good feedback from our RevealJS slide, and the hyperlinks are now active, which is great. I don't know why they weren't before, but the hyperlinks are now taking me So this one is taking me to the issue. I'm guessing the reason they weren't before is because I had multiple issues. So if there's multiple issues, it doesn't know where to go. If there's a single issue, it looks like it might know where to go. So that is actually really good. That's really, 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 really cool. Really, really nice. Okay. Let's see if we can engage with the extension. So now the extension, we're going to use this RevealJS plugins scripting here, so that's on the same line as Axe. I'm actually going to comment out Axe for now. We'll come back to that. So I'm going to turn off the Axe review so we can just focus on the extension itself. The extension that Kulas did not yet install in this project directory. So we got to go through that again. But that's okay. So we'll go through this process again of yes, we trust. We won't go through the World War II foxhole thing anymore because that's just silly. Making changes, yes. No, we don't want to see the documentation. So we'll try to re-render this now. There we go. So you can see the extensions in my project directory, and the presentation itself doesn't look any different. But the way in which, so the things you can do with the Ally extension, there is built in here, let me get to a screen with text on it. So let's make a little more text here. We don't do lorem ipsum here. We do yada yabba 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 dabba do. But I guess I didn't do yabba dabba do. I did yada yada yada, or yada yada yada. So the one of the ways in which you can engage with this extension, and again, what my mind is going to is you have a multiplex situation, even if it's not multiplex. You have a situation where the student has a local version of this on their device that they can access. Now, if they hit the A button with this extension, the A button is giving you all kinds of accessibility settings. Now, we can set these in our YAML now as well. So we can say what we want to be operative by default. There is a high contrast option. There is an underline links option. The color overlay gives you some more easy reading kind of perspective on things. So you can change that. It gives you kind of all these pastels, pink, blue, green. I'm going to turn that off because I don't know, that doesn't help me. But if we look at the font size, so this is really cool that you as an individual reviewer or audience member, you can engage with and change the way this content looks. So this would obviously be for visually impaired primarily. If you take a look as I navigate through here, look on the top of the slides. This is the visual cue that's indicating there's an advancement of slides. There's a blue line that's actually going from left to right as we transition here. And so that's a visual cue that's on there. We can also have audio cues. I think audio cues should be, I can't tell if they're actually operative or not, but they should be by default operative. We'll go back and we'll take a look at that. We'll potentially change that. So I've changed the font size. You can change the font family, and so the font family is supposedly, some of these are a little better for things like dyslexia. I know. So here's a open dyslexic font that kind of looks more handwriting-ish, I think. You can also install from here, you can install one of your system fonts. And so these are my system fonts. So I can go in there and just, the slide deck itself will take from my computer. Again, think about a student who's accessing your slides and they have a font on their computer that they like, this will, as long as it's installed on their computer, this will go ahead and display it. Here's a silly one I have, which is Walt Disney, and look what it does to everything. Absolutely everything on the slides is affected. You can have line height spacings. So think of a word processor in terms of distance between lines. This is something we used to play. This is something we used to play with as an undergraduate when the silly professor would say it's got to be 3 to 5 pages and you only had 2 to 4 pages. We would play with things like line height because professors would never figure that out, right? Oh boy. I can't believe I became a professor after all the things I tried to do to get one passed on professors. Letter spacing is cool. So letter spacing extends it as well if things are a little too compressed. Word spacing is the same content. It's just shifting the words themselves instead of the letters. And you can play with both of these. You can play with all three of these. You can have whatever settings you want to maximize the motion and cue. I do want that visual cue on. So the only thing on the accessibility menu that it's giving me option to toggle is actually that vertical line, or the horizontal line that you're seeing at the top of each slide that's indicating progression of it. Okay, so let's actually see what else we can engage with here on the Ally extension that is intended to maximize accessibility for individuals who are using your RevealJS slides as authored via Quarto. So here's the configurations. It looks like by default high contrast is not engaged. So let's go ahead and turn that on and see what that looks like. So high contrast, how does he have this specified? So it looks like at the same level as my plugin specification, I am going to indicate the extension itself. I'm going to put that high contrast to true. I do want alt text warnings, and I'm not getting those. So we're going to come back and take a look at that. Visual and audio should be true, so I must just not be hearing it, but the audio cue should actually be coming through. So high contrast, I might have it messed up a little bit with my choice of fonts, but we'll go ahead and try that regardless. We'll see what that looks like. And probably with black and white, honestly, it might not look that much different because I already have the black and white specified. Yeah, so it's not looking that much different. If I were to use a different RevealJS theme, I wonder if we might see something happen there. Now, of course, I don't remember all the theme options. I know there's 11 of them. Moon, Dracula. Dracula was one that we played with. I want to try like one that I wouldn't choose in terms of color scheme, because I think that's maybe where we'll see the high contrast come through a little better. Okay. So here is our so it is kind of giving me kind of a grid layout or a box layout of the content. And this probably has something to do with all of the choices that I've made here. Yeah, there we go. So the high contrast is overriding the theme that you've specified. So here's the theme without high contrast, and you can see it's pretty washed out. It's actually extremely washed out. So I would not be considered someone who's intended target of accessibility kind of accommodations, but I think I want them for this. So if we were to re-render this with high contrast being true, looks like what it does is it just kind of washes out that middle, or you would hope it will wash out that middle. Okay, so It's operative within the accessibility manual here for me. It didn't operate in the specification that I actually have straight off of the YAML. So we'd have to play with that a little bit. Let me make sure that I did this. I think I did that right. It's kind of I'm kind of paranoid about indentations on YAMLs because they used to be a lot pickier than they currently are. They're getting a lot better. There it goes. So that time it was operative, and I'm not sure what's happening. It might have something to do with my browser. I have so many tabs open, but that worked just fine within the YAML specification itself. The audio and the visual cues I have already. Skip navigation. RevealJS kind of already has this, but again, it's maximizing keyboard navigation. The focus indicators. The one that so you can see all kinds of capabilities here that are possible within the Ally extension. If you are interested in increasing accessibility for your audience, go in there and use it. And if you do, let me know kind of what your experience is with it. I toying around with the idea of doing a conference presentation focused specifically on RevealJS slides and how they might be leveraged within classroom applications. So I would love to know a little bit more about how this feature in particular, in terms of accessibility, is being used and experienced. So if you do use it, please let me know. I would love to hear that. What I want to do, I know we're over again, but I do want to check that alt text warning because I want to see it. So I want to see it on, and maybe it's just needs a hover. So there's my high contrast again. I'm getting no warning there. Ooh, okay. That's not something I expected. So I don't think that's from the extension, but I got a weird kind of browser issue there. And I thought we did give it an alternative text. It might be fig dash alt, not fig period alt. Could be what's going on there. We could look it up. Probably should look it up because I'm not great about using fig alt. So let's do that real quick. Fig alt Quarto. Yeah, it is fig dash alt. So there we go. So that's what I was missing, I guess, and that should be interpreted as an HTML tag, which should be brought up by things like screen readers. Okay, so let's re-engage with Axe and see what Axe thinks about what we have here with some of our accessibility features enabled. I'm going to do the wrong spelling of fig alt again and see if it picks up on that. I should have turned off the literally goofy text. I'm going to change that font family back because it's too hard to read. So the image elements have alternative text. Again, it doesn't like this. Let's try doing this correctly. Fig alt and see if that gets rid of that. See if that gets rid of that issue. Okay. So that's actually okay. So it's got a separate issue now. So it did get rid of the fig alt warning that we were getting specifically for our Daredevil figure. So just to reproduce that, I'm gonna intentionally misspell fig alt. If we go to the end of our document here, it says critical ensure image elements have alternative text or a role of none or presentation. The links, I'm gonna have to look into that a little bit. I'm not exactly sure what that's referring to, but the image for sure, the image, this particular error we can make go away just by giving it. Now, it's not going to review the adequacy of your description. It's just going to note that there's an alternative, that there is an alternative there. And so we no longer have that as an issue on the Axe Core report. Okay, so we went over again, sorry, but I don't, I obviously didn't give this extension the full run through that it probably deserves, but those of you that are interested in increasing the accessibility of your RevealJS slides, if you do engage with this extension, please let me know how it goes. I would love to hear about it. And I'm probably going to play around with it a little more before next week's recap, so I can talk about kind of some of the feedback and how to use that feedback a little more knowledgeably than the kind of haphazard way that I did right there. Okay, so remember, next week will be 2 hours early, and next week's topic is already decided. We're going to do short codes, so I'm looking forward to that. Short codes are something that I've been using with increasing frequency and should be a lot of fun. All right, thanks everybody. See you next week.